Our next match here is the finals for Division One, which are Wolf, the person that you saw earlier from Skutt, versus Loki, also from Skutt. Wolf, otherwise Colin Fuelberth. Again, if that's not your last name, I'm still sorry, but you're not in the room to stop me. He is a 12th grader. His record is 10-4, and he is from Skutt Catholic. His opponent is Colin Graham, two Collins, one with one L. That's Colin Fuelberth. Two L's is Graham. He is also from Skutt Catholic. No, I'm completely wrong. Ignore everything I've said. Wolf is playing against Loki. Wolf is still Colin. That hasn't changed. He's still from Skutt, and he's still 10-4, still in 12th grade. His opponent is also from Skutt, Loki, AJ DePuter. He's from Skutt, also 10-4, a very impressive record, also in 12th grade. So the first and second place will go to one of the two Skutt boys. We will hop right into the matches. We are spectating Wolf's point of view. He is playing a warrior deck. This is likely the same warrior list that we saw him running earlier, but now we get to see what cards are in his hand. So just a reminder, warrior is a late game list seeking to beat your opponent later in the game by producing armor and controlling the board through the mid and early game. It appears that Loki is playing Druid, but not the ramp Druid we had seen earlier. This is a Druid list that is built around aggression and doing lots of damage very quickly while flooding the board with many small minions, as we've seen him do. He has just dumped his entire hand to produce 6 1 damage minions. This will be a tricky situation for Wolf to try to play out of, and we will see how this works out for him. It looks like he's starting by buffing up his minions to hopefully be able to break through this board before it inevitably or before it ends up killing him in the early game. Loki's plan here is just to send all of his minions face as quickly as possible and hope that Wolf does not have an answer. And if he doesn't, that would be the first game. But if he does, it's going to be very tricky for Loki to come back from all of this with just cards on board and none in hand. Wolf, with his Crab Rider, has found a pretty decent option for reducing damage here. Crab Rider has Wind Fury, so it can attack twice. It also has Rush, which means that it can attack minions immediately when it enters the battlefield. Loki, however, is finding ways to answer that card draw issue. He's played this Guess the Weight and guessed correctly, so instead of drawing one, he's now drawing two cards. Loki is increasing the damage he has on board with a Power of the Wild, giving all of his minions +1/+1, making it more difficult to deal with and more damaging to the opponent. So if Wolf cannot find an answer pretty quickly here, he's going to find his health lower than he would like, and he may lose this game before this next turn is out. Loki has 12 damage on board, and Wolf does not appear to have an outright answer to all of this. Even if he hero powers to gain 2 armor like he would like to do in the mid game, he cannot reduce the damage and pressure on board by enough to not die here. So it looks like this first game here is going to go to Loki from Skutt Catholic with his token druid list that just simply got under the guns of the warrior and beat him down before he was ready. Wolf will need to win the next 2 rounds to take first place in Division 1. Loki just needs to win this next one here. And we will be waiting for the next game to get going, and that's up to the players to choose what decks they want to run, and we will see how this goes. So it looks like Wolf is running back the same warrior list we saw earlier. The list again seeks to armor up and protect itself in the early and mid game, and then eventually outvalue the opponent in the late game. Loki is he cannot run his token druid list, which worked well last time. That's already won and cannot be brought back for the tournament. Instead, it looks like he's running a paladin deck. Paladin has two archetypes in standard right now. One of them is a secret paladin, which seeks to again put up those secrets which mess with your opponent's plans and cause difficulty for them later in the game. There's also an aggro list. However, it looks like this is a secret paladin list which seeks to put again things up on the board. Wolf is, as warriors try to do, probably going to clear off the minions here or in some way reduce the damage on board while putting pressure and protecting himself. He's doing that with his Warmaul Challenger, which is just a minion that loves to fight. When it enters, it fights something until one of them is not able to fight anymore. Loki is showing all of the synergies with secrets in his deck as well. The Sun Reaver Spy enters, and if you have a secret, it gets larger, as well as the Sword of the Fallen, which just puts secrets from your deck into play, further disrupting the opponent's game plan. We will see not only how Wolf will answer the board, but he will also need to play around the potential secrets. At this level of play, the players often have a good grasp as to what secrets the opponent will have and how best to play around them. So the game knowledge that they have here is necessary in playing around situations with Secret Paladin and getting the best option for yourself. So Loki is playing a couple spells he created. The Crimson Sigil Runner, which he just played two of, are not cards that are normally available to Paladin. However, earlier in this game we saw him play a card called First Day of School, which adds two 1-drops to the hand. To get the same two 1-drops that both replace themselves with a card is a very fortunate outcome for Loki here. Hearthstone does rely a bit on RNG or randomness in non-Hearthstone terms. So creating cards can produce you more value later in the game, and producing the right cards is often a great way to win the game just by outvaluing your opponent. So here's one of the secrets we were talking about earlier that Loki needed to play around. This one triggers when an opponent attacks, when an enemy minion attacks specifically, and it creates a 2/1 blocker that changes the target of the attack to it. So with that card there, it allows Loki to cause problems for Wolf's attacks and make it so that he cannot actually clear off the board here and ends up leaving up a 6/3, which Loki will then trade in to get rid of the high damage minion that Wolf had just produced. Again, we see more synergies. So unlike a traditional aggro deck, Secret Paladin has these cards that draw minions that mess up the opponent, and it feels more like a mid-range deck that allows you some kind of interaction with the opponent before they can really respond. So it's less of an aggro deck and more of a mid-range deck, which is where Wolf is going to be struggling in the next couple of turns. However, if Wolf can play around the cards that Secret Paladin is throwing out and outvalue them with his warrior list, he should be on a pretty good path to win this series in the later game. Again, we see another secret here. Avenge allows when a minion dies, you give one of your minions +3/+2, making it more of a threat and more difficult for your opponent to deal with later. So this screws up Wolf's attacks here and makes it harder for your opponent to feel safe without any armor or taunts up. This animation we're seeing now is Loki's Kazakus Golem Shaper. Kazakus normally would just be a 4-mana 3/3 without any abilities. However, if you build your deck around it and you put no other 4-cost cards in there, you can create a custom golem. The one that Loki created, there's options of a 1, a 5, and a 10 cost. He's choosing a 1 cost lesser golem, which allows him to depending on what you create again, clear off one of his opponent's minions randomly. The one that he ended up clearing off was the bumper car, the 3/2 rush minion that continues to get value later in the game. Now, one of the key cards that's helping Wolf win this value matchup here is Roka. Roka is a legendary minion, so normally you can only have one. However, Wolf created a second one that you can see, as this one was created by Athletic Studies that he played earlier. Whenever a friendly minion attacks, it gets larger and harder to deal with. So it really is a matter of causing more problems for your opponent and being able to outvalue them later in the game. We just saw Loki turn his secrets, his disruptive elements, into a minion here. Now, this minion allows for more board presence and more aggression towards the opponent, and he's hoping that that will allow him to break the board of his opponent Wolf here and be able to go in for the win and take the series that way. However, Wolf seems to be throwing down more rush minions, defensive minions that again can only attack enemy minions the turn they come down. And as he continues to throw those out, he's showing that he can answer the board and deal with it pretty effectively. The interesting thing here is the secret that Loki has up. Wolf still has not triggered that, although what you can do with secrets is guess which things you've done already, and with that knowledge, you can determine what the secret is later in the game. So right now, we can assume that Wolf has a pretty good idea as to what that secret is and how he needs to play around it. It also looks like he's looking to find a way to kill his opponent here, as he does have 10 on board and his opponent only has 18 health. So this is that late game situation with Hunter, or excuse me, this late game situation with Warrior that we were talking about, where the goal is to survive until you can burst your opponent down with your higher value cards. So right now Loki is facing down quite a bit of damage. He'll need to either find a way to answer Wolf's board or deal 19 damage to him, which it doesn't look like he can do. So with his turn ended there, unless that secret is something that Wolf entirely misunderstood. No, that's the first game there, or that's the second game there. The score is currently 1-1. This next game, which cannot be using the Druid list or the Warrior list, will be the final to determine first place for Division 1 here. All right, so we are entering the finals of Division 1, the final match of the first place bracket here. The third place bracket just ended by the looks of things, and the lists that we're seeing here are Druid and Hunter. Now I'm Oh no, never mind. Those were different players. Excuse me. So we will see how this game ends. Again, Hunter's game plan is to deal damage to the opponent faster than they can stabilize and get to the late game, and Druid can be built in a couple different ways that we've seen so far in this tournament. So Loki, having a much less explosive start, opens with just one minion instead of dumping his whole hand. And Wolf, acknowledging that this minion is a reasonably large threat as it can fill the board, as we saw in the first game of this tournament, elects to just outright kill it out as fast as he can. Loki doesn't seem to have any more value pieces here, so he's just hero powering and going towards the opponent's health total. So this game is two aggro decks playing against each other. The key things we need to look for here are paying attention to the overall health total, as well as who's trading and who has the board presence to deal more damage. The outcome of this game will be determined by who can produce more value later. I would normally give that later value to a token druid list, but Hunter does have the capabilities, just as we've seen before, to get under the guns of a token druid and outvalue and outdamage them, especially in the early game where Hunter specializes. One of the notable cards for Hunter is this Imprisoned Felmaw here. It's 2 mana, so it can come down very early. And it's a 5/4, so that's a very large minion to be coming down on turn 2 or turn 1, even turn 3 as we've seen here. However, the downside for it is it waits for 2 turns before it can do anything. When it does have that trigger after the 2 turns, though, it will attack an enemy randomly. So it's a early investment that you're not doing things with, but once it comes online, it's a very high value, high damaging thing. Speaking of high value, Loki's just dropped a Glowfly Swarm, which creates a 2/2 minion for each spell in your hand. So this is a great tool that Druid has to fill up the board here, and this allows him to do quite a bit of damage to Loki pretty quickly, and fill up the board and try to swing it back. Wolf, however, is trying to answer this Glowfly Swarm with his either Piercing Shot, or he might be thinking of trading as well. Piercing Shot does 6 damage to a minion, so it's a great way to clear, and it's made even better because you can send the rest of that damage to your opponent's health total, furthering your game plan of get the opponent down to 0 before they can stop me. And this is one of the things we were talking about earlier. Loki needs to try to get rid of the enemy's board as well as produce his own and trade effectively. So this turn, he hasn't sent any damage to his opponent's health total, but he has cleaned up the board pretty nicely. So he's going to hope that that's enough to keep him alive until the Druid mid-rangey and aggro value can outpace the Hunter, who at this point does only have 2 cards in hand. Currently, Wolf is looking at which card he wants to draw from his deck, and he will decide how best to reduce his opponent pretty quickly here. He's trading minions, trying to get the board presence back so that he can use his board to do damage. It looks like Loki is on the back foot as Druid, but that's mostly because his character and the cards he has access to are more aligned towards later game value rather than immediate early game damage. As we can see here, Soul of the Forest is one of those later game value cards. It allows him to replace his minions that he trades in with other minions, notably 2/2 Trents or trees, so he can give up his board to get rid of his opponent's Raging Felma, or Imprisoned Felma, excuse me, which does offer quite a bit of early game damage that we were talking about earlier. And in exchange for that, he can still keep a board presence of 2/2s that can then trade and deal damage later. It's important to note the inclusion of Warsong Wrangler in the deck. With the deck only having a total of 2 beasts in it, you can consistently choose and draw either your Trampling Rhino or your Woopertanger, which the Woopertanger, as we've seen earlier, is used to regain the board state and deal damage to the opponent quickly, where the Trampling Rhino, as we might see right now, when it has Rush, so it can attack immediately. And when it attacks, any excess damage tramples over to the opponent's total health, so it's a great piece for doing damage to the opponent's face. Wolf seems to be doing a bit of math here to see how quickly he can kill the opponent. He's sent another 2-face, and his hero power does 2 every turn. So if Loki does not find a way to either gain health or outright kill Wolf this turn, he will lose just to the hero power, regardless of what else Wolf has in hand. and it looks like all Loki can do is hero power. Now, Wolf in hand has 2 burn spells, and he top decked a third one. All of these do damage to Loki's face, and because he could not gain any more health or outvalue Wolf here, Wolf will take the finals, putting him in first place, and Loki will go to second place in the finals here, Division 1. So those are your winners. We look forward to congratulating them, and our next match on here will be the Division 2 first and second place finals.